Hey guys, this is Alex, and welcome to the Two Dudes, Brews, and Reviews podcast. On today's episode, we're talking about 2019's slice of life drama, The Sound of Metal. If you like what you hear, consider subscribing to the podcast, give us a rating, and maybe even tell your friends about us. With that being said, we hope you enjoy the show.
Anyway, we're not drinking anything special. We're drinking a fine Pilsner, good old Miller Lite.
Hey, they make it in Trenton, Ohio.
They do.
Do you think the cans that we drink actually come from that plant?
If my father was here, he'd be able to tell me.
I've always been curious about that.
Most likely it is. Typically, they will cover, like delivery-wise, they'll cover as far as you can get before it becomes unnecessary, like with other breweries and shit, but...
I think the amount of Miller Lite that's consumed in Ohio requires that factory right there. It just fulfills the need of this one state.
When I was at my dentist, he was making sure I didn't have the Trenton, Ohio tooth disease, and I'm like, what?
Ew, what's that?
He's like, everybody I see here clenches their jaw too much. They put in a brewery for you guys. You think you'd relax. I'm like, okay.
That's great.
But yeah, Miller Lite and The Sound of Metal.
Yeah, this is the film that you chose.
Which you would have chosen at a later date.
I would have,
But,
yes.
yeah, we didn't. Neither of us had watched it prior before my suggestion, and I think that turned out pretty well. I think if I had watched this film prior, I would have got a little burnout on it. And I don't mean that as a negative attribute of the film. I just think, in general, it's pretty short and sweet. I mean, the film is 2 hours long, but it's got great pacing. And it's a subtle film, character drama, good sound design. It's easy. I think it's easy to digest, at least for the material.
I think so too. I mean, you're right. It definitely is very simple, not incredibly plot driven, much more about performance and
Situation.
Situational. These moments of silence, like this. Not really sure what the word I'm looking for is. I would say atmospheric, but it's more like a lack of atmosphere.
Solitude.
Yeah, solitude. That'd be a good way to put it.
Yeah, the movie makes you feel extremely isolated at times. And I don't mean that in a horror aspect or... how do you put it? I don't know. The film just takes its time to breathe a lot, which is actually something that I think more films need to do.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm looking at you, Luca. Goddamn Pixar don't know when. Hey, man, they did it in Soul. They let that movie breathe. Why can't they do it in Luca?
For a moment, I thought you were talking about the guy that directed Suspiria, that Luca. Maybe he should have let things breathe too. No. Or maybe actually he let them breathe too much in that movie.
That movie is a long-in. It's a long movie for...
Yes, it is.
I don't want to think about that movie anymore. I'm trying to push it out of my brain.
That's okay. I get it.
I think one of my favorite things about the film is that sound design, the ability to just kind of put you in Ruben's shoes.
Oh my God, these moments were painful.
Yeah,
incredibly painful. Like, did it hurt your ears? Like, did you sit there like discomfort by it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say like pain in my eardrum or anything. Maybe not until like the third act, but because I watched the film with headphones on, and I just found it a little uncomfortable. I mean, it wasn't like excruciating or anything, but I found it uncomfortable. And I think it plays well into where our character's at in the film and his journey becoming recently deaf. I think the film does a great job of letting you empathize with him, as well as other characters.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's not like a judgy movie.
No.
It's not taking a stand, or taking one side over the other or anything like that.
It's extremely nuanced.
Very slice of life.
Oh, it's my favorite.
Thought about Manchester by the Sea quite a bit when I was watching this.
Me too. A lot of nothingness.
Just hanging out in the moment.
Yeah. You know, I would recommend this film to people, but I think it's one of those movies, especially with the ending, that leaves you open to interpretation and a little bit of nothingness. I think this film accomplishes a lot more than Manchester by the Sea, at least character-wise, and
Okay.
like the hero's journey. I think our character learns something by the end, and I think in Manchester by the Sea, it's more of like...
He takes the tiniest of steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That movie feels like something's fizzling out, and everybody around it's tried to like feed the fire to start it up again. And
there's definitely a lot more hope in this situation. It's more about our character letting go of his past life more than anything.
I think one of the best terms that would fit that is he has to It's called radical acceptance.
I've never heard that before.
You learn it in therapy, my friend.
Okay.
I didn't think I was going to take this route, but here we are. Yeah, it's just like...
God, we're like 10 minutes in. Jesus.
We're going deep. When someone goes through trauma or crisis, one thing that happens is it's very applicable to like when a loved one dies. You go through the grieving process. A lot of that is like disbelief, rage, and you'll become lethargic, yada, yada, yada. Now, however much time that takes, it varies for a lot of people. But by the end, it's learning to accept the fact that what's happened has happened.
Okay.
And that's what radical acceptance is. It's something that happens that you get taught when you can't accept something that's happened to you.
Like, yeah, I've never heard that term before.
No. Here you are.
Learn something every day.
I'm a certified counselor. Welcome to my office. Do you see a butterfly? Tell me what you see. You know what those are?
Have you really had to do those before?
No,
like the ink blot paintings?
I don't think so.
I'm not even sure what they use those for.
It's to see how a patient views the world.
It's always seemed like more of a movie cliche than like a real life application.
It's something that happens, but I don't think it happens. I don't think it's used in practice probably as much as you think. I think it was something probably more akin to like late 1900s, like last century, like, 60s, 70s, 80s until like
outdated method.
Yeah, like mental health became like the medical profession, the field probably developed a lot more. I've never heard of anybody ever having to do that. So, but anyway, yeah, Ruben, he goes through some shit.
Yeah. I think he's an interesting main character, and this is something that I always like in movies, is that he's a flawed main character. He's incredibly stubborn, makes many mistakes throughout the movie. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. Riz Ahmed, is that how you say his name?
I believe so.
This guy was great in this role.
Yeah, what else is he in?
I looked at this today. You ever seen Nightcrawler?
I've seen bits and pieces.
Okay. He's like Jake Gyllenhaal's sidekick in that movie, kind of. He did have a terrible role in Venom as like the villain of that movie.
Oh, yeah. I remember that. I never watched that movie, but sometimes it's on TV on the weekends at Elizabeth's house for some
really?
reason. And that's where he's from, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it. It fucking sucked. I don't blame that on him, though. Nah. It's not his fault. He was also in The Sisters Brothers, which I thought was very good.
That's right.
This might be like the first time he's been like the protagonist in a movie, like leading man. And I think he does it really well.
Yeah, I don't question it for a bit. I think moments in the film where it's just kind of him and the camera, I think he really excels at that. Specifically, the scene where Joe makes him write. The first time he has to sit down with the pen and paper could be put on like one of those best acting of whatever year compilation. I think he does a great job not only of like selling the fact that he's struggling to sit down and he's struggling to sit down and accept. He's trying like to face himself at that table. Like his line delivery, like makes you question who he's speaking about. Where he's like, "You fucking idiot!" Like, is he referring to Joe? Is he referring to himself? Like him smashing this donut, and then like bringing it back together. I'm like, oh, he's bringing it back together. He feels bad that he's like, why'd I do that? And he's like, oh, he hits it again. I'm like, okay, this guy, he's got some anger issues.
Yeah, he certainly does. Did you feel like his character was like very vague? Like we didn't know a whole lot about him except for like what was involved in this situation that the movie like presented to us.
I have a comment about that because on my second viewing, I picked up a lot more on certain lines. Because in my first viewing, I mean, it was just like emotional onslaught, and I had a hard time stepping back from how I was feeling while watching it. Which that first viewing was an experience. I mean, it was like top notch. That's what I want. I want to feel the whole way through. But on my second viewing, I got to listen to when he's talking to Lou on the way to their concert, like in the first few moments of the film, and he's mentioning something about his dad, and he doesn't know his dad. And it's like very, very subtle.
Just like mini character moments.
Yeah, it's real subtle, and it's hidden in their car talk, in their just easygoing conversation, traveling from city to city. It gives a little bit about the characters. I'm not saying it's profound or anything, but it's a little bit of backstory. Like, okay, he doesn't know his dad. You get to find out later, like he's an addict, but he's been sober for 4 years.
I think you can like kind of learn a lot about him during the scene where he's like going through his morning routine, like before he has the hearing loss. Like he's making like shakes for him and Lou. He's like working out. It feels like he has this regiment that keeps him grounded, and it's probably like habits that he learned through getting sober. You know what I mean? So I thought like little small things like that were really nice.
Yeah, like he's learned to take care of himself. And also, I don't know if you noticed, but like his tattoos are really interesting.
There's some strange ones.
Like the bug on the neck.
Doesn't he have like a pair of like boxers, just like, or like underwear somewhere on him?
I think so. The one that I noticed the most was like the "kill me" on his chest.
Please kill me.
And like he has like almost like a roach of some sort, like on his neck, on his right side of his neck under his ear. And I'm like thinking, like, okay, I'm thinking about like it looks like he would smack himself on the neck to smack a bug away.
That's good.
Was it like a tattoo he got when he was on drugs? You know, stuff like that.
Oh, I didn't think about it that way.
I like adds curiosity. Like the "please kill me," that seems like a drug tattoo.
Either a dark time of his life or like a super like inside joke, like super ironic in a way.
Yeah, little things like that I think add to his character. But yeah, for the most part, it is extremely linear throughout with his character. I mean, you only get this small slice. There is like a little bit of a time skip. I don't know if you noticed.
What, like towards the end?
Like kind of towards the middle, prior to his operation, where almost feels like the seasons change and he's learned sign language.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I couldn't tell how long it was, though.
Yeah,
it was a little unclear.
That was confusing to me. I'd imagine it's probably been 6 to 8 months, you know, at that point, like from start to finish till we get to that time jump. Although his hair doesn't change.
Yeah, his hair is the exact same all the way through. Like the dye job, like doesn't like the roots don't show through anymore.
I don't know. I was like extremely hopeful for him in that moment because I'm like, okay, he's making progress, and I thought a lot of it would be kind of him coming out on the other end of that and like going in a more positive route. But I was really worried because I thought we were gonna take like a super depressive tragedy spin towards like the end of the film.
That's where I thought it was going.
Oh my god, I'm like, my heart was sinking. You know what I mean? Like it fucking wrecked me.
Didn't I give you like a really incorrect prediction of like how the movie would end? I told you that I thought he would get that surgery, regain his hearing, and then like the ending shot of the movie would be him like back on stage again, like fucking it up all over.
I don't think you did. I don't think you told me that. Or did you tell me at work or something?
I think so. Either that or I imagined us having a conversation, which is entirely possible.
No, I'm glad that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that would have been like a super like misery porn style ending. Like I hate movies like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of movies. I was more worried because I think the film sets up this track for him where he can easily fall off of it. Like he could easily derail this path in front of him. You know, they allude to him like being worried about him doing drugs again. I was worried that we were going to like watch him relapse in a way, especially like after he gets kicked out.
Yeah, that's where I thought it was headed too. I was kind of shocked actually at how many of like the dramatic cliches that the movie avoids. Like the relapse was a big one. I thought that maybe he would strike up a romance with that teacher that he kind of gets close with.
Right.
Like, I kept waiting for that beat, that story beat.
You see those laid out in front of you, and I think on my first viewing, I was viewing the film that way. I don't know, because you get like these really intimate shots on these characters because they're deaf. They kind of don't have the same ability to like describe emotion, you know, to be able to put words out for the audience to hear. And I don't know, it's like visually like extremely peaceful. And I think part of that, when you see the teacher and Ruben and the children bonding, it kind of feels like a little bit more than just like a community thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of tricks you, you know, because it is so cliche and you wouldn't be surprised.
You know, a big one that I was expecting was that when he returns back home to see Lou, I thought she was going to have a new boyfriend, and they didn't do it. They didn't do the cheap story beats.
I think the film sets you up really well for those anxiety-driven possibilities that the story could take. I mean, I was in the same boat. I mean, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, are you? Because the dad answers, what do you call that? When you buzz in. Oh, he like answers the speaker or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, dude, it's a dude. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck, we're screwed. We're about to watch Ruben assault a man. But yeah, it completely avoids it. And I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess they were like sources of drama that the story could have used to like elevate the tension. But the one big dramatic moment, like the one that you do get at least, is one that I didn't expect, and that's when Joe kicks him out of the house.
Yeah.
Just for getting the surgery.
Yeah, I looked at Joe a little bit.
Did you have a hard time like nailing him down?
I kind of viewed him a little bit as an antagonist to begin with, and I don't mean that like he's malicious, but he stands in the way of our character that we've already established, like taking his phone, taking his keys, kind of like throwing him into the fire. Those first few days are extremely uncomfortable, and it kind of feels like the film sets you up in a way to isolate that character from everyone else, and it kind of does feel like, how is this going to go wrong? Because so far at that point in the story, like everything has gone wrong. So I mean, you wouldn't be surprised if it does dive deeper down that spiral of chaos and uncomfortable drama, but it doesn't. Joe has his best intentions.
Yeah, I didn't see him as a antagonist at all. He seemed like a very stoic, firm, like a veteran of this world, where like he's kind of the guy that you would hate to let down, like a good father figure. You know what I mean?
I think maybe I viewed him a little bit of an antagonist to begin with because he is so stoic and so firm. Like he's so unwilling to change his stance. Like there's no wiggle room with him. But he does that for the betterment of the community, because the community is, a deaf community that are previous addicts, whether it's like alcohol or other drugs.
I think the actor that plays Joe deserves a shout out. Paul Raci, I believe. Never seen this guy in anything, actually.
I don't think so either, yeah.
And I looked at his filmography, like all the acting credits that he had, and nothing I'd ever heard of before.
Really?
All like small time, like theater productions. And so he's like, I think he's around like 60 to 70 years old. I read a little like interview blurb by him, and he said like, I'm so-and-so age, and I'm just now getting offers because of this movie right here. So good for him, because I think he did a really fucking great job. He commanded the screen when he was there.
Man, he's got like such deep crevices on his face.
Hey, he's what, a Vietnam veteran?
Yeah,
He's seen some shit.
He I don't know why I said that. He has deep crevices. When you learn to draw, this might be weird for those of you who don't know, I do have the ability to draw to some extent, but it's easier to draw people with wrinkles than it is to draw people with smooth faces.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
To make someone's likeness appear the way they are, the wrinkles provide more of a guide.
Okay.
They provide more, it's like on a cheek. A cheek is extremely smooth majority of the time on a young person's face, from the time you're a kid to maybe, 30, and then you start pushing 40 and 50, and you start to develop wrinkles on your face. And when you're drawing a face, you have to get the eyes, the nose, and the mouth right in proportion to the rest of the head, the ears, the placement, all that. And if you're trying to make someone's likeness look like them, it becomes difficult when there's no anchors for you to gauge distance on. So if you had a wrinkle underneath, say, you have more laugh lines, or, part of your neck hangs more, or your eyes are more deeply creviced, it becomes easier to draw the form because there's smaller forms within those, and you can... Yeah, it's weird, but it's easier to draw someone that has wrinkles in their face.
So what you're saying is drawing Timothée Chalamet would be like impossible?
Yes.
Because the man has the smoothest face.
Facial hair is really hard to draw, too.
Really?
It's hard to get facial hair right.
I guess I could see that.
It's one of the hardest things. It's one of the biggest things I struggle with when drawing faces is facial hair. Because when the light moves through like a beard or something, if a beard's long enough, it's like hard to, I don't know. Anyway, off topic, but Joe's delivery, what's his name?
The actor's name?
Yeah.
Paul Raci.
All right.
I believe.
Paul's delivery as his character of Joe is amazing. I think he's better than what's her face? Lou.
Olivia Cooke.
Yes.
I don't think that she has a lot to work with, really. She's like a very underdeveloped character.
Yeah, I think she does a great job of dealing with the crisis at the beginning of the film. Like, not her character, but her acting.
She sells the worry.
Yeah. Like dropping everything and dealing with this crisis right in front of us, that's typical, non-emotive, very analytical. There's a task in front of you. I think in the third act, when she comes back, I have a hard time with her a little bit.
It's kind of hard to like read the situation.
Yeah, and it becomes more apparent as that scene closes when, they do say their goodbyes. And I think it's very fitting for the characters, because it seems like at this point in the film, we are never going to return to where we started in any facet. So it just kind of feels Yeah, I mean, she's gone for the majority of the film, so it is hard to read that situation because I guess she doesn't really have... There's a huge amount of time where we don't really know her side.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she doesn't give enough screen time for me to appreciate her.
Yeah.
She sings beautifully, though, with her father.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
With discount Hans Zimmer.
I actually forget what the piano player looked like her dad. Does he look like Hans Zimmer?
Kinda. I don't know. He reminds me of Hans Zimmer. His facial, it's like very European. I don't know. You get to learn a lot about the past, through those scenes with the father as well. I think it like deepens the experience because you are thrusted into these characters' lives so quickly, and it's kind of hard to understand where they're coming from. And you get like this kind of intense scene, like his line delivery talking about how he says, "I must be honest with you. I did not like you." He says, I did not have good feelings for you or something, but now I see that it wasn't you that I had bad feelings for. It was because I thought you took her away from me, but in reality it was her mother that took her away from me. Mm-hmm. And then she took her away from me again when she killed herself. And I'm like,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, dude.
It's like a super dramatic backstory for a random side character to have.
His character, that does seem like kind of a harsh delivery, but I think that character is a little bit more open. He seems like a very emotional man. It almost feels like maybe he's an artist of himself because that was one of her father's songs that they sung. So maybe he had his own music career and his daughter took a liking to music and then went out on her own.
He probably doesn't approve of this drone noise style metal that Ruben and Lou play together.
Oh my God, dude. I was not digging it.
No, me neither. Even though like you really only hear it through like muffled tones, you can tell that it's like a shitty band. Mm-hmm. What are they called? Like Black Gammon?
Something like that.
Okay. I think it's only really shown on like T-shirts or photos like within the movie.
I think one of the biggest things that I kind of was frustrated, but then I learned to... how do I put this? Let me put it this way. I was like having such a hard time hearing her voice when they were first singing, in the first beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And then I was thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, but maybe that's to articulate like how shitty Ruben's hearing is already.
Most likely, yeah.
Because when I was going to like kind of nitpick the film, I was like, wait, he just all of a sudden loses all of his hearing?
Yeah, this doesn't happen. I did some research on it too.
It's a gradual process.
Yeah. And it's almost never both ears at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's never like a bilateral, like deafening at this, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I actually read through some comments on Reddit, of course, about like from the deaf community. Like I kind of wanted to know like what they felt about the movie. And it seemed to be a lot more negative on that side, actually. A lot of people disagreeing with the fact that Joe kicks Ruben out for getting the implant. Like, I don't think this is something that would be argued against within the deaf community. But I found that interesting, though. You know what I mean? Like, this movie is, like, putting a limelight on that community. But, like, they're the ones that... I've only ever really seen, like, negative comments about it right there. Found that strange.
It might be the problem with generalization when it comes to, like, touchy subjects. Like, I don't want to get political, and none of this is my own view of, but like trans community, there's like a lot of buzz around like trans community drama, and like just like maybe when a famous person changes their gender or yada yada yada, like people that aren't trans standing up for trans people and like speaking on behalf of, and then certain people in the trans community that are just like, I just want to live my life, or and that goes with like gay communities, black communities, people that I don't know would be considered not white, not heterosexual. I don't know. Like, just I'm not ingrained in any of these cultures, and so when you do have something that kind of tries to throw perspective on a certain situation, it can be taken both ways, where I'm empathizing with the person that's going deaf, and then you have a deaf community being like, yeah, but that's not really... So it's like this double-edged sword of like, okay, do you raise awareness or do you piss off your player base? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
There's always going to be detractors.
Yeah. And there's people that will like things and not like things, whether they're in a community or not, when it comes to like a film like this.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of like the trans community, a couple of years ago, they actually made a TV show called Trans, I think, and it had like Jeffrey Tambor playing a trans person in it, and like everybody was upset because it was a non-trans person playing the character.
Yeah.
I saw people complain that Joe in this movie is played by a man that can actually hear. And I think there is a point where
with Riz,
it'll be like too fucking nitpicky.
Yeah.
Like, they're actors. They're playing someone not themselves.
That's their job.
Yeah.
I mean, the entire film, there are completely deaf actors in the film. The lesbian woman that helps Ruben sell his RV and his equipment and everything, and she has her own car, and she's actually deaf. I like watching an interview of the cast, and she had to have a translator there for her to talk for her. So they are inclusive in a way, which inclusivity is never something that's really bothered me in films. Like, for the most part, it's not something that I get frustrated about when an actor or an actress is portraying someone that maybe they don't have the merit physically, but I don't think that's the point for the most part. And I know, I don't know. People will say oh, well, you have to give these people that are actually in these shoes an opportunity. But it's but are they actors? What's the pool of people to pull from? Did they even fucking audition for the role? It's, you know what I mean? It's just there's so many steps along the way where, I don't know, you can only do so much, and you're not there in the casting process. You're not a producer, and neither am I. So I'm just judging the film for what it is.
Yeah, just what's on the screen.
Fuck you, Reddit.
It's kind of weird. I thought this was a great movie, but I didn't love it as much as I thought I was going to.
Okay.
And I don't know if I actually have any negative things to say about it. I think that with these slice of life movies, you have to feel it, and that's really the biggest thing. That'll bring you enjoyment out of it. And for some reason, I didn't have as much of an emotional response starting in the second act going forward, and I don't know why that is. Were you super emotionally invested?
I think the moments that I loved the film the most were what Joe was talking about. Let's talk about, I'll get to my point, but let's talk about the scene where Joe kicks Ruben out. I was worried because my first thought is, Joe's probably worried that Ruben's going to use drugs. Ruben snuck around and has shown us on screen and not to other characters that he is acting a little out of character for where he's supposed to be, in the eyes of the other people in his community, progress-wise, and he keeps coming back to the computer, and, he makes an appointment, behind Joe's back. Joe as a character, he's looking for Ruben to find peace. He wants that for Ruben, and obviously that was the point of the notebook and in the pencil or pen and paper or whatever. But Joe's saying those moments of solitude and peace. Those are the moments of God, or he's
the kingdom of God.
And and it's kind of shown that Joe is more religious, and even at when Lou and Ruben show up, he's the church helps people, not religious people. If you're looking for someone to, provide you money.
Yeah.
And I'm okay, yeah, sure. And then I think ultimately, whether it was about whether you want to put a name to the feeling, or the kingdom of God, he was looking for Ruben to find a measure of peace to sit with himself and be content and not even happy, but just accepting. And I think those moments in the film were my favorites. Specifically when Ruben and one of the kids that can't sit still go outside and they sit on the playground on the slide.
I love the scene.
And I didn't really click with it until the second viewing, but I'm this is Ruben's way of playing music for somebody.
Yeah.
Those moments are really special to me. The moments when all the kids are gathered around the piano and they're just listening, or not listening. They ain't listening to shit, goddammit.
But they're feeling the vibrations. Yeah.
And those are beautiful moments, and the kids playing and they're the community's playing out in the grass, and I don't know, it just that's where I found my enjoyment the most.
A lot of cutesy stuff.
Yeah.
And I was a fan of it too.
I'm a sucker.
I love him leading the class along, playing the drums, and everybody's off time. Him signing the alphabet in a race against that one kid. Those are all that's your emotional root of the movie. These great human connection moments.
And I felt those moments the way they were supposed to be intended, but I also felt the anxiety on 10 in those moments where Ruben's getting kicked out and you're immediately he's staying at a motel and it's oh God, who's he gonna fucking run into here? Visually I was being led along to say, oh, this is gonna go fucking bad. Oddly, I think not having a score for the film it's very fitting, but I think it kind of helps you. It adds wonder and curiosity of not knowing what's going on, because like a film score will lead you into whatever you're supposed to feel, and it's extremely visual in this one.
Yeah.
And I think that's really fucking smart. And not to say that the sound design doesn't lead you there, because it does. I mean, when you have like these moments of tranquility and complete silence and listening to people bang on the table when they're around a dinner table to communicate and get someone's attention, and they're laughing, and it's a way to articulate and show what this is like for someone that can't hear, and you know, fun dinner conversations, or the ability to hear those things, like, but you're stepping back, you're not able to understand what's actually going on, but it's just showing you the emotion. And then when you get to the motel and then you crank up the volume of like street, you know, you're not on this, you know, 4 acres of land that's just completely silent.
It's like all this like city sound type shit. God, the sound design for when after he gets the implants is, if I had to listen to this every day, it would drive me mad.
Yes.
It's like some of the most dissonant tones that I've ever heard. And I've listened to Swans.
It's like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you have. So have I. The torture, like, it feels like you're just watching Ruben torture himself.
Yeah.
It's fucking terrible. And I think this maybe won best sound design or like sound editing.
Good.
That year. Yeah, I think, God, I feel bad for him. I feel for him because he was wanting this fix.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me because I think there was these people around him. You know, Joe alludes to the fact that a lot of people care about him around here. Like, you've become very important to a lot of people around here. And I almost think like Joe's talking for himself without directly saying so. You know, I think Joe has taken a liking to Ruben. You know, it feels like, I mean, it's his job is to take care of him and lead him.
But Ruben might be like a standout among this group. And I felt that too, for sure.
And you don't get a lot of interactions with Joe with other people in the community, but
Nah, it's not that kind of movie.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I love Joe. He's my favorite character. I love him.
Same.
And I think what kind of sells the fact that Joe really cares about Ruben is Joe doesn't want to kick Ruben out. He doesn't, but he says he has too many others to consider. It would be like a big hit to the
Morale of the community.
He said that his house is built on the principle of being deaf is not something to fix. He says that we all have to be constantly reminded of that. When Ruben walks away from the table after being kicked out, and you get that last moment of Joe like quivering, about ready to cry, fucking breaks my heart.
Oh, I felt it hard.
Bad, right? It sucks.
It's crazy how quickly like Ruben is just like, yeah, man, fuck this. Like he does kind of have like a shitty attitude about just about everything throughout the movie.
Yeah, I think he doesn't open himself up a lot to many people, and it's not always on screen, but I think he does develop. I mean, when he has that conversation with Joe of like looking to the future before he makes the decision to get the operation, you know, they're having a funny conversation, you know, where Joe's like, I'm extra old today. It's probably his birthday. And he says, Ruben, you look like an owl when you walked in. That's why your name sign is wide-eyed, you know, basically like the C above an I. Ruben just casually gives him the fuck you, the middle finger. And it's like, you know, he's built, you know, a relationship around these people and with the kids and, you know, probably the classroom and, you know, the families that are around these kids and the teacher. And it's tough to see him like walk away from it.
It's super disappointing.
Fucking sucks.
Can I say that I think the first act of this movie is perfect? I think for like the first 30 to 40 minutes, I almost like held my breath the entirety of the time.
I agree.
The anxiety, like the tension is cranked up all the way to 11. And I think that like me and you are both musicians. We play guitar and fuck around on drums and piano and shit.
I've never even like put that label to my name, but it's weird to hear. It's weird to hear it come out of your mouth.
You're a musician. You know how to play.
Yeah.
Like for people like us, this movie is like a fucking horror movie for the first 30 to 40 minutes.
Yeah. You know, Elizabeth was telling me, she says, if I ever go blind, I would want to die. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no. I'm like, don't say that. I'm like, what if you do go blind? And she's like, my job is built around the fact that I can see. And I'm like, okay.
That's true.
I'm like, I understand. Man, I immediately thought about what it would be like to be deaf, not to be able to hear what I'm playing or hear music again.
Hey, man,
makes me want to cry. Jesus Christ.
Hey, man, Beethoven turned out all right.
He did. He has a lasting legacy for sure. I got a funny TikTok to show you. I don't want to say this on the air, but I got a funny TikTok to show you about Beethoven. It's fucking hilarious. But, you would find a way. You would find a way to fill that.
Yeah. There are people that skateboard with no legs. Mm-hmm. There are people that learn how to play guitar with no hands or no fingers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right. Like, humankind, if you're persistent enough, if that's like really your true love, then you'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, God, when Elizabeth said that, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that is true. Like, if I couldn't hear, so much of my life would change to not. Music is such an integral part of my day. It is for everyone. Let's be honest. It is more for others than some, but
we're two guys that sit here and will talk about an album for 2 hours straight.
Yeah,
and that's different, know.
And I love really weird shit that maybe like 1% of people I know would even give a time of day. I love classical music at the most untimely point in my day. I'll listen to conversations and the ability to hear other people's perspectives. Like, it would change a lot. There's closed captionings and all that, but so much changes when you
tone of voice.
Yeah.
Volume.
Yep. I thought about other handicaps that could happen to me. Like, what if I can't walk again one day? Like, how much of my life would change for that reason? Like, would I lose my job? Or like, would I be able to, whatever? Will my dick work? Jesus Christ. Like, I don't know. Sorry, I got to lighten the tone. But
we're getting introspective here.
What if my dick don't work, man? I can't go pee-pee in the... All right, sorry, I'm done. I'm done.
Oh, my God.
But yeah, just, I feel and I empathize for the people that, things that don't work for them. And they'll find their way. But it just puts a lot of things in perspective, things that you take for granted a lot of the time. And I think, I wanted to bring up this point, but I think one of the biggest things I enjoyed about the film, it reminded me so much of one of my favorite things that I experience day to day.
What's that?
Do you ever have a moment in your day, and sometimes it'll come at the most unexpected times, but you're just like, yeah, like this is what life's about, or like this is peak experience?
Definitely. I'm sitting in bed with my wife and I'm surrounded by golden retrievers, and that's usually the moment for me every day.
For me, it's like I'm getting off work, maybe I throw my like songs on shuffle, and a fucking good ass song that maybe I haven't heard in a couple months comes on, and I'm like, I almost forgot, and I immediately sit back and I'm like, this is what life's about. Sun's on my face. Those moments that Joe was describing, I try to have as many of those a day as I can, because I think those are extremely enriching. They like allow me to continue on with the things that would be considered akin to like suffering and things that are difficult and I don't enjoy. Mm-hmm. When those moments come, it's extremely comforting.
We need those reminders to keep going.
That's what I pulled from the most in the film, and I think the film ends on that for the most part.
Kind of, yeah.
How long is that last scene?
Where he's like sitting on the park bench. Mm-hmm. I bet it goes like a minute or two.
It feels like eternity.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a good way.
But it's just quiet. Yeah. And it makes you sitting on the couch watching it, you are also taking in that moment. It's really quite beautiful, actually.
Yeah, I think that moment of Ruben accepting what he is. And that's not to say that he won't put them on again, to hear someone's voice maybe.
It's just the acceptance.
Yeah.
Like, that's what matters.
Yeah.
I was a little torn at first on the ending.
Really?
A little bit, yeah. I think maybe that's the case with a lot of like anticlimactic endings, like where things are left a little ambiguous. Like it hits the credits and you're immediately like, oh, okay. Usually you have to like wrestle with those kind of endings for a few days.
I've said this many times on the podcast, I'm sure by now, but when I showed my dad Manchester by the Sea for the first time, when it was over, he was literally like, why? He was like, what was the point?
Yeah.
I think this film's a little bit more upfront with what the point was, but yeah, it's anticlimactic. It's not it's not like the ending of Uncut Gems where it's like you've had like this intense, pedal to the floor experience and then it abruptly ends. I mean, it led its way there pretty comfortably. I
Yeah.
think the first half of the film is extremely anxiety driven. It's not to the point of the Safdie brothers, but I think the dialogue is so combative, in that front half of the film. And I think the back half of the film is much more like a tamed wild animal. Like,
Yeah, it's quiet,
Yeah.
reflective.
yeah, I enjoyed both halves of the film. Do you have a problem with that? Because I know you had said,
No, not really.
because you said the first half's like a 10.
Yeah, like the first 45 minutes are like absolutely perfect. Him going to like visit the doctors, like him doing like the hearing test and showing up at the pharmacy. I thought all that shit was like amazing, actually. I think the film loses a little bit of momentum in the third act once he's kicked out of the deaf school. And
I think so too.
I know that's like kind of the point, like because he's aimless now. It's like the momentum of the film is kind of aimless for the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I realized like that's what they went for. I just wasn't as interested. You know what I mean?
I do think it kind of gives you a moment to cool off from what's all happened. It becomes a little bit more reflective in that way, like these shots of him in the city with like this terrible noise that he's experiencing. God, it's fucking so frustrating to listen to, and I mean that in a good way. But I mean, it does give you that time to kind of settle into this wandering lifestyle that he has to live now. He doesn't have a job yet. Does he? How much money does he have? We don't know. Like how it's kind of this setting up like this way to come back to Lou and close that plot line between those two characters.
Are they broken up? Like
Yeah.
after that scene?
Yeah. I don't know if you got as much out of it as I did.
What did you get out of it?
The way I viewed it was they both knew when she got in that car to go to the airport that it was over. Ruben was going to find a way to get back to where they had started. And I think them like starting to kiss and like her reaching for a glass of water. She was really uncomfortable when they first had their first hug when he was, he showed up. It's written all over her face.
Doesn't he say something like, we can get back on the road and get this thing started up again? And his ability to read her is what brings him his acceptance of the situation. Like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
we don't have to.
The party kind of helps cement that in a way because he's so unable to hear what's actually happening in that room. I mean, all those people, and then the fact that he can't make out piano notes and her voice.
The beautiful tune they do, like, isn't translating to him. That's really sad.
It is. And I think it's a really good way to, in a way, call back to them around the piano. Like, watching those kids absorb the piano, and not all of them were interested, don't get me wrong, but, like, some kids were a lot more into it than others, and you can tell the ones that were really paying attention.
Yeah.
Ruben was able to feel what they were feeling as a group, and he's so isolated from the rest of the people that can hear. And, he's unable to make out the words when someone tries to speak to him, and he has to, like, kind of walk away. I think having that time to allow him to accept, and I think that scene specifically when he's at the piano, and you just get a zoom in on his face, and, like, this, it's heartbreaking, and it's extremely scary to, like, imagine where he's at in his shoes. But, when they get down, they share a cry. He's like, it's okay. And she's like, what do you mean? And it's like, bitch, you know what the fuck I mean. Like,
We don't have to say it.
yeah. And I didn't pick up on this either, but she's like, he says, like, you've saved my life. You turned it into something beautiful. Fucking broke my heart. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, you saved my life too. And I didn't really pick up on that, but I'm like, oh yeah, they were both addicts, and he was sober for 4 years and they had been together for 4 years. So they had, like, gone through this journey together.
Was their, like, entire relationship also based off of the fact that they're just, like, in a band and that they're on the road all year together?
Probably. I mean, you build yourself around people in certain ways.
Yeah, but
They
it feels like
probably-
a flimsy thread, like the fact that they couldn't be together unless they were doing that. Maybe that's me missing the point of something, but I was, like, disappointed in that in a way.
I think part of it is it probably adds, and you are right, like, they could try to, like, mend, that relationship and build it back up. But think about it, she probably still wants to pursue music. He can't hear, does he want to travel with her, not, and be isolated in that way?
Yeah.
I think the film, the way it ends, leaves it up to interpretation. It's like, well, where does Ruben go from here? You know, you don't know. Music is no longer really a part of his life anymore.
Yeah.
At least in the way that it was. And I think them letting go of their relationship was also a way of him. He's never going to get the same amount of fulfillment out of that relationship as he would with other people that are maybe in a deaf community, or, you know, if he surrounded himself with people that are like him.
Yeah. That's what it took for him to be able to move on from this goal he's chasing that he can't possibly attain anymore. Were you wanting more music-related stuff in the movie?
I think the film was marketed in a way that it would be.
I thought that's what it was going to be.
Uh-huh. I thought we were going to go like Whiplash route for some reason.
A little bit, yeah.
Like, I knew nothing about the film prior to watching it besides like a little bit of promotional material, like him playing drums and like quick cuts of like later in the film where he's part of a deaf community and stuff. But I thought it would be like more of a battle between him and his hearing, where he would try to keep playing and it would lead more that route for a majority of the film of like on stage time.
That's exactly how I thought it was going to go. He goes deaf in like the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's super quick. And the way the film starts, I'm like, oh, this might be like a Safdie Brothers film, because it really does just take off.
You know, this is the it's basically like the mainstream directorial debut by this director. I think he might have had like an indie film before this called Loot, but like I don't think many people have seen it. The only other thing this guy has really done is he helped co-write the movie Place Beyond the Pines. You ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
Do you know what it is? It's got like Ryan Gosling, Bradley Cooper.
I've never even heard of that.
Damn, really?
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
That was like a really big movie, like my senior year of high school. But yeah, he had a co-write credit.
Back in 1970 something.
I'm not that old, motherfucker.
Sorry.
But yeah, he hasn't done much yet. I don't know if I actually thought about the direction of the movie, like in terms of cinematography or anything as it went along. I don't think the movie really like brought itself attention to being stylish or like setting up really sweet composition or anything. It's like a lot of like handheld, shaky, like that kind of shit.
Well, watching the film today, the scene when Joe kicks Ruben out, in that moment, I was really paying attention to the shot. And not to say that it was some extraordinary, you know, this is a very grounded film. But for some reason, it was so much more intimate than the first time. And I'd seen the scene, I've probably seen it 7 times now, because I've watched the scene outside of the context of rewatching the film. And I don't know, being able to see the grain of the film on the screen against like drywall, you know, I don't know. Not to say it was like beautiful cinematography. I think the film just allows itself to open up the characters, and isolate them, and that's the focal point. I don't think much outside of the sound design and
performances.
Yeah, and like the shot composition, I keep bringing it back to, but like him going to the motel, that sit down with Joe felt really intense, even though Joe was so calm. You know, it was a very calm conversation for what was actually happening there. And yeah,
very
Joe,
stern,
stoic, you know. You watch Joe wrestle with his emotions, you know, and he only lets them go once Ruben gets away from the table. But to me, it was the sound design and the shots, the way they moved the story along were extremely emotive in the way they made you start to infer of what could be happening next was really important. Like when Ruben walks up to the dad's apartment or house or whatever it may be, when he's buzzing in, you know, you don't know what's going to happen next. A male voice answers the intercom. It's so anxiety filled. I mean, little things like that.
Getting a lot out of very little.
Yeah.
I respect shit like that.
I do too. I think, I don't know if you could ask much more. I mean, this movie's in such a vacuum.
Yeah, I agree. So, I don't know. I mean, like, even like the complaints that I've mentioned are like so minor. It's just more a case of how much do you feel it?
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing. If you don't, you are not going to get a lot out of it. I want to say that if you sat somebody down that maybe wouldn't be interested in this, if, you know, you ask somebody what their favorite movie is and it's like summer blockbuster fall horror films, that combo, it's hard to recommend this movie to somebody. When someone says, oh, I like Fast and Furious and I liked that one that The Rock was in with Kevin Hart, it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really hard because then they're going to look at you like, man, this motherfucker's weird. It's hard to recommend a film like this because you have to feel it.
Yeah. I don't think it's like weird enough to like scare somebody off though.
No.
It's a very human story.
Yeah, but with that, you have to be able to open yourself up to that. And there are many people that just shut themselves off to stuff like this. Like, I remember watching Grand Budapest Hotel with Elizabeth, her mom, her sister, and her brother. Me, Elizabeth, and her brother were like glued to the fucking screen, but everybody else was like, that was a fucking weird ass movie when it was over. And I'm like, yeah, it's a weird ass movie. It's supposed to be fucking weird and quirky and like,
yeah,
like that's the fucking point.
I feel like people that will listen to something and just say, that was weird, like they're often like very boring. Weird is not a good describer for most things.
What it says when someone says that's weird is what they're saying is I don't understand is what they're saying. It's another way to articulate I don't understand. And most of the time when someone says it's weird, it means I'm not going to give another thought about what I just listened to.
Unfortunately. Yeah, you're very correct.
I remember specifically, I'm sure I've said it. It's hard telling if I've said it on the air or not, but I showed somebody.
We have goldfish memories here.
No. Fucking lobotomized over here. The Daft Punk record, Random Access Memories. I played the outro for somebody one time, and I'm like, here, listen to shit. Listen how weird this shit is. Like,
you told me this story.
Yeah. And they're like, they didn't even get like 10 seconds in, and they were like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, but dude, did you hear? And they're like, you're weird. And I'm like, okay.
And then you're afraid to show anybody anything else again.
Correct. So,
listen, man, you're my only friend. You're the only one I could talk to about this.
Yeah, it's a very niche film. I wouldn't recommend this to everybody and their brother.
Yeah, it got its respect though. I mean, it had you mentioned it got an Oscar nom for. Did you say it won for sound design? It definitely deserved it there. I think I read that Riz Ahmed got a nom for actor, and I think Paul Raci had a Best Supporting Actor nomination.
As he should.
Yeah, I don't think he won, but good for them. They do deserve it.
This is a film that I would have got around to eventually, and I'm glad we did it for the podcast. But I think I'd feel the same way, regardless of whether we had to do the podcast or not. I think the film scratched a lot of the itches that I wanted out of a film. It kind of has a feeling of. I don't know. I feel like after I've seen it, I feel like I'm one of the ones that have seen this fucking masterpiece. I'm in the club now. I think part of it just comes from like the film's extremely intimate, despite the subject matter can be a little heavy-handed or intense with what we're dealing with. But it feels from start to finish like a journey, and there is a good, acceptable resolution by the end. I think I'm content with what's happened.
I feel pretty much the exact same way. I don't know, like, actually, I can't gauge, like, how much you love this. I really like it. I mean, there's, like, no denying it's a great film, deserving of awards nominations, and it's very unique, kind of like in its own category. How would you rate this?
Well, you said you can't gauge how much I like the film, but you really like it. I don't know that I would hold it in one of my favorites because, let me put it this way. Manchester by the Sea is like in my top 10 favorite films, but I don't think it's because I like connect with the film. I don't think it's like a technical feat of some sort. I think ultimately, this film kind of shoehorns its way into like the similar category of how I view that film is that I just really appreciate it. I'm glad I watched it and I got a lot out of it, but I don't know that there's something that will keep me coming back to it.
Yeah.
And it's that similar problem with Manchester by the Sea is that I can think about that film and I'm like, I'll scratch that itch. I'll scratch that what the film was getting at just by thinking about it. When I go back and watch something like Interstellar or Into the Spider-Verse, it's like soundtrack for Interstellar, performance by Matthew McConaughey, the complex situation, the plot is really complex, playing with time and space. Spider-Verse, it's a visual feat. It's a great story. Every time I come back to that film, it's so feel good. It's like film watching masturbation. It's like it's something that when it's over, I don't know. It's so much more of an enjoyable watch. And with this film, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. And I loved I fucking love the characters, and I love the situation that we're in, and I love Joe and Ruben, but ultimately I'm just kind of like, yeah, I got it, and it's over, and that's fine.
I can't guarantee that I'll ever have the fix to watch it again, but like you said, I'm glad that I did see it though. I would recommend it to other people that have good opinions on movies.
It falls similarly into like I recently watched Seven Samurai. Same thing. Like I get it, and I watched it, and I appreciated it, and I thought it was really interesting. But that's enough. Not to say that just because a film doesn't have rewatchability doesn't mean it isn't good. You don't want to read the most heartbreaking book over and over again. It's why would you put yourself through that?
Some awesome stuff is just a one and done.
Yeah. I may read Stoner by John Williams like one or two more times in my life, and that might be pushing it. But when I read that book, when it was over, I was glad I finished it. I don't know. I think this film, as it stands, though, outside the fact that it may not make it into like my top 10 films or something, I think this movie is at least a 9 out of 10. I don't really think there's anything to take away from it for the most part, but I'm comfortable. Like I would even go like 9.5.
Okay.
It might be a 10 out of 10. I don't know. I might have to sit on it longer.
Going into this, I thought you were going to give it a 10.
I just really liked it. I mean, I just really liked it. I enjoyed it. I just don't know that I grafted onto it in the way that I would like carry it on my sleeve for the rest of my life.
When it comes to scores, I think I'd give it like a strong 8.
Okay.
I
think that's completely fair.
I think everything was well done. Love the performances. Love the dialogue. Great, like character-driven film. Like concept-wise, thought it was great. Like the deaf community is not really something that's tackled very often in film. But yeah, I think I just wasn't as emotionally invested in the story by the end. But like anything lower than an 8, I think would be like sacrilegious.
I'm immediately thinking about like Moneyball, because I think that's another film that's extremely subtle. But I think maybe why that film might be a 10 out of 10. I think it has that feel good aspect to it in a way. I think that film, dialogue wise, has a lot more going for it. I mean, granted, this film is a lot of it's in sign language, So I mean, and the dialogue's on screen for you, but it's just it's so much more subtle than I think maybe anything we've ever watched. It's like,
at least for the podcast, yeah.
It's like, I would say at least half the film is pretty much tranquility. It's like so peaceful and quiet. So I don't know. I think our assessment is fair. But I liked it a lot, and I'm super glad we watched it.
It was great.
Sir, the floor is yours. Hail Mary, baby.
Damn, I literally just realized that I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't have a white boy spiel this time.
That's great.
I always have a few things to fall back on, I guess.
You're showing up to the test without studying, my friend.
Yeah. We'll see how this goes. Austin, would you rather do a movie or an album next time?
Given the fact that I don't know when the next time we're going to sit down and do this is, I would rather do a film, I think.
Okay.
I think it might be a little bit easier on me, if that's all right with you.
No, that's completely fine with me. Okay, I got it. The next movie that we're going to do is by a director that I'm not like a huge fan of. He's only done 2 or 3 movies that I would consider to be enjoyable by my standards, at least. But it's a film from the 90s that focuses on a director that's kind of a failure. You ever seen the movie like The Disaster Artist?
No, but I remember when it came out.
This movie is kind of like that, but much better, in my opinion. It's a black and white movie. It stars Johnny Depp, Sarah Jessica Parker. There's a few other weird names in here. But it's about the man that filmed one of the worst movies of all time called Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's the movie is called Ed Wood, and it's directed by Tim Burton.
Yeah. I remember you talking to me about this.
This is a very funny film. I mean, it borders on comedy, which I guess we haven't really done before, like a straight up comedy.
We watched Jack and Jill.
Is that how you'd classify that movie?
Something like that. Fucking train wrecks are funny.
But it's just a funny, well-written, like, comedy, like, drama type thing. I think it's something that you'll dig.
I remember you talking to me about this. Was it maybe like back in the spring, sometime when you watched it?
I think so, yeah. I saw it for the first time earlier this year or the end of last year.
Like on HBO Max or something?
I own it, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe the first time I saw it, maybe I rented it from the library. I'll just give you, like, my Voodoo information so you can watch this.
Oh, I'll figure it out. I'll rent it or whatever. I might go out and buy it. I might love it so much or something.
It's technically like a Disney movie, but it's rated R, so it's like not on Disney Plus. I think all the Tim Burton stuff is owned by Disney now. So you can watch like Edward Scissorhands on fucking Disney Plus.
Weird.
Yeah. This one's a little bit darker than that, but a lot of great one-liners. It's a funny movie. Think you'll dig it.
Black and white. I'm always down for the black and white. Hey, we did it. We did the thing. It always feels like we're getting behind the wheel and we don't know how to drive, and somehow we made it to our destination by the end. But yeah, we did it. It was fun. Next time will be Ed Wood. We got a fun bonus coming up after this, but if you stick around for that, good on you. But until then,
hell yeah.
Getter, if you could do me the honors, I'd appreciate it.
Adios.